Disclaimer: I do not own Naruto or Harry Potter. This is not my story either. It will be linked in the description below. Now, with all the legal stuff out of the way, let's begin. She was dead. Yep, that had to be it. For a moment she'd been dead with her suddenly quiet but lunatic teammate again, Sasuke, not Sai, who had his own, far lesser brand of idiocy, and boy was she mad at him. Her reincarnate psychic/psycho or otherwise brother figure had taken almost all of Kurama's chakra from her, and Kami. My arm still. NNNNRGH, she winced in pain, scolding herself for not taking it like a man. Stupid Sasuke's Chidori to the chest had certainly been more painful than this when she was a child. WH, who the hell are you? A super old dude that was coming into focus did something to her throat. She coughed but found that whatever he'd done didn't hurt. The others she was just noticing in the room put sticks to their own throats. I asked, who fucking are you? Language, young lady, some creepy looking old dude in black said menacingly. His lips weren't quite matching up with his words, though. Weird. Wake up, Naruto. She closed her eyes and shook her head, making her dirty hair smack her in the face. Is that a stick? Holy, Naruto yelled, her arm was gone. Sasuke, you bastard. She appreciated the nun who was trying to stop the bleeding, but where the hell is Sakura? Fucking balls. She scowled at the old god who was trying not to laugh at her. A god, she realized as her head continued to pound. Well now. This was awkward. Yo, Kami-sama, she began, trying to be properly respectful. The old guy was obviously Kami. She'd definitely never seen anyone so old, glamorous, or well-dressed before, not even the floating sage of six paths. Shouldn't you stop this bleeding or something? I thought my parents would be here in the Pure Lands, too. God damn it. Hee, sorry. Naruto didn't see the way the geezers around her had all looked at each other worriedly as she looked down at her hand. Come on, Kurama. Heal this. Shith, she slurred. She pushed her head back into the abnormally fluffy pillow and groaned. The next time she woke up, Naruto was still in the same room, which smelled like antiseptic and bleach, and Kami was still there. Her arm was bandaged up, but the bandages still had a bit of blood on them. Can I please have my arm back, Kami-sama? And can you do something about the smell? You're Japanese. You're Japanese, Naruto snarked under her breath, not knowing what that was, but sudden clarity hit her. Oh, gods. I'm in the genjutsu, aren't I? Mother FFFF. How do I wait? Did someone put chakra through a stick earlier? That means Yamato Teiko is here. People were looking for him. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for both Yamato and / or negative chakra signatures. Or is this the Tsukiyomi? Kai. Dumbledore's hair and beard blew back from the amount of magic the young woman had just dispelled from her body. There was something ancient about it. His quick mind worked through what she'd said and what he'd read about once, long ago. Chakra. The foul-mouthed young woman was already quickly ranting to him, her god, some kind of sauce, and a person named Kurama. After listening to her for a short time, it seemed likely that she believed she was dead. What a boisterous young woman. Truly, it was comforting and almost unheard of for her to be so energetic after losing so much blood in a limb. My dear girl, he said, lifting his hands in a gesture of goodwill. The girl watched his hands as if he would attack. I mean you no harm, and you are very much alive. So this is the Tsukiyomi. You're not exactly what I thought I'd be dreaming about, Kami-sama, Naruto replied, closing her eyes to better get her wits about her. Kurama was sleeping, lacking the majority of his chakra, or maybe she was just dreaming that he was still with her at all. That must be it. She couldn't feel any of her comrades that were in those pods, or Kakashi-sensei, or Sakura-chan, or team. She was also still Lupa from blood loss or maybe something she'd been hit with. That sucks. From what Obito used to say back when he was evil, this illusion was supposed to make all her dreams come true or something of that nature. She knew it was too good and too gross to be for real. There's an evil in that guy over there, she whispered as she looked up to glare at the corner. Dumbledore chuckled, and Snape appeared from behind his transfiguration. I am not evil, and this is not funny, Headmaster. I didn't say you were evil, dipshit, you've just got some kind of evil corrupting you. The goth man grabbed his arm rather obviously and Naruto nodded once at him. So you're aware of it. Albus, a woman's voice rang out. Naruto was impressed by the way she'd been hung as a cat. She didn't like cats, though, but the old broad felt alright. The lady had a wrinkly, severe expression and had to be as old as the Sandaime when he was alive. The blonde pouted, saddened by her thoughts of her grandfather figure being reanimated. She was so glad that he'd helped them, just like her father did, what? But felt bad for his spirit having to be revived like that. At least the Hokages were no longer inside the Shinigami's belly. She idly wondered what they'd been doing in there. So. You look like you're wise, Kami-sama, Headmaster-sama, Albus-sama. Weird name for a god. How would you suggest I get out of this situation? Naruto asked in poorly faked cheer. She glared at the others that came out of their hiding spots who were now chuckling at her. Can I see Ero-sennin? The super old woman scoffed, and Naruto chastised herself. She was only human, though, no matter what other people thought of her and Kurama. She couldn't help but want to see her mentor again after everything that had happened. He'd be so disappointed in me, though. Kami cleared his throat and Naruto looked up at him. The old woman was still complaining about perverts. Naruto could understand that. May I ask how old you are? Sure. 16, today's my birthday, I think. At least it was, she answered, wondering how long she'd been knocked out. She involuntarily tried to scratch her chin as she considered it but winced at the pain it caused her mostly absent arm. My goodness, a woman with a remarkable earth affinity said in what sounded like horror. How in the world did you get to this state? She asked, gesturing toward Naruto's stump. Naruto finally really looked at it and winced. She felt a subtle change in her surroundings and wondered if she was in a genjutsu again. Maybe an even super genjutsu? She didn't care for some reason. Odd, it must be the effects of the Tsukiyomi. My team and I battled Kaguya, the rabbit goddess, and won. The old lady in the glasses jerked back in surprise and doubt, while the temperature cooled. Kami and the guy with the evil arm were making things colder, and Naruto could understand why. Then, my idiot teammate, the bastard, wanted to kill all the cage while they were in their pods, and I was not going to allow that, she said before sighing in despair and trying to shake the chill off. Then he imprisoned the Baijuyu. I can still feel a little of them inside of me, but I really failed. Why am I talking so much again? Naruto wondered. She should really be warier about revealing any of this. Everyone was in the Tsukiyomi with her, though, she figured, so what was the reason to be silent? Maybe by revealing some information, she could get some in return. Not as in a trade, but as in sneakiness. Keep your wits about you, Naruto. Don't tell them. What is your name, child? Naruto admitted, despite herself. Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm not a child, Kami-sama. Albus nodded, stunned by what the girl had just said. Frankly, he thought she was at least a decade older, but perhaps that was because of the ancient magic within her. Snape scoffed. Albus, surely you cannot believe this nonsense. I have ensured that she is telling the truth, Severus, and the knowledge she possesses is quite restricted, he assured his colleague. Minerva had to be informed of Kaguya because she was deputy headmistress. From Severus' reaction, he apparently had heard of Kaguya, which frighteningly meant that the Dark Lord may know of her, as well. The only other person that would have possibly known of Kaguya may have been Nicholas Flamel, but that wizard had recently passed. Naruto wanted to summon Gamekaki, but how was she supposed to do that with only one arm? I'm going to have to learn how to do one-handed signs. It had to be possible. Haku had done it in that ice dome, not that she quite realized how incredible that was at the time. I may have a solution to that, my dear, but for now, sleep. Kami raised a stick over her head, and Naruto knew it was wrong to allow it in this genjutsu, but she complied easily anyway. She really was so very tired. I'm sorry I mistook you for Kami. I guess that must have been a pretty hard hit to your ego there, Dumbledore-sama. Albus only chuckled, glad that the child was finally listening properly after sleeping for over 48 hours. It was almost unbelievable that she was able to nearly fully heal in that time, aside from the pain of missing an arm, of course. Not at all, Naruto. Being compared to God will only increase my already inflated sense of self. Isn't that right, Minerva? If anything, Naruto thought that Minerva looked even more severe and disappointed than she had before, something the blonde hadn't thought possible. Absolutely. The last thing this man needs is more people worshipping him, the witch said. I don't know about that, Albus quipped, his eyes twinkling. Naruto watched them, very curious about this bunch she'd landed herself among. She'd been told that her body had washed ashore, kicked out of a society of mer people, for Kami's sake exactly when the headmaster was taking a walk by the lake, practicing a new magic technique of all the stupid-sounding things. Everyone she'd met thus far, from those who seemed really nice to those who were completely unpleasant, thought that chakra was magic, but Naruto knew that their magic was chakra. They directed it into wands, as far as she'd seen. Supposedly, according to Dumbledore, chakra had evolved into magic, and real shinobi hadn't been seen or even heard of in many years, aside from in movies and television shows, or books. That was kinda like the way she'd always seen magic portrayed in fairy tales and TV programs. Naruto figured that the elemental nations must simply be hidden from these strangers, she just needed to get back there. And how fucked up was it that she managed to land herself at a school, though? A supposedly elite school, to boot. Naruto flippin' hated the academy. Shopping. The lollipop Dumbledore had given her nearly fell out of her mouth as Naruto's head turned from the volumes of tomes and shiny things in Dumbledore's office at the horrible word. What did you say about shopping? She asked, her last word a nearly frightened whisper. How many times did Ino and Sakura-chan try to drag her out to experience one of their awful shopping escapades? They'd only forced it on her once, thank Kami, because it had been horrible. I said that we need to go shopping, Namikaze, the glasses-wearing old witch said sharply. Pay attention. Hi. Naruto replied immediately. She had been about to snort at the idea of there being witches and wizards again and tell them that she'd never go shopping willingly, but this old hag inspired fear like Iruka-sensei did when he was on a tear. It was also weird as hell that they were calling her Namikaze. She didn't even remember telling them her father's name. She guessed Dumbledore found out about him during his mind walk, or legilimency, as he called it. I don't do shopping. Nonsense. How will you get your books and robes if you don't go shopping? Minerva asked incredulously. Naruto smiled cheesily at the old woman. I don't do books, either, Kanagel-sama. Minerva glared at her. You do now, child, she said with a frightening undertone. Yikes, Naruto mumbled to herself, putting her lollipop back into her mouth and looking at Dumbledore pleadingly. Of all the people here, he was the one she was most pseudo-comfortable with. She didn't hold anything against him for pulling a Yamanaka with his mind walk earlier, she was an unknown and powerful threat. He, also, was powerful as hell, but his chakra burned bright and was pleasant, Nara thought. He was also damn lucky that Kurama was asleep when he dove into her mind, not that she'd tell him that. Kurama might have finally been able to eat someone like he always threatened to, otherwise. Other than forcing her to sleep and the mind walk thing, Dumbledore seemed alright, but she didn't completely trust anyone anymore. She probably never would again. She thought that Sasuke had come back to help them and be her friend again. "You will be able to obtain a wand when you go shopping, my dear," Albus said kindly, using the tactic that he felt would motivate the girl. "So that I can do this magic stuff, and well, then. I guess why not? Just go easy on me." If a day of shopping was what was required to get a wand and figure out how to magic up whatever she needed to do with her chakra, she'd go for it. Plus, the jeans they'd given her to wear were super uncomfortable and scratchy. The shirt was alright, at least it was orange. But all of the buttons were just stupid. It would take her forever to get it off and on. The obi-belt thing was okay, scrolls would stick out of it and possibly be ruined from being housed like that, although she could stuff some weapons between it and her pants easily enough. And don't get her started on the bra. Naruto needed to exchange that really badly. She also wondered what they had done with her boxers. Hey. They were the most comfortable thing to fight in. She didn't need to be pulling panties out of her ass when she had to do a jutsu, no matter how many times Sakura-chan scolded her about her undies. "Oh, wait. Do you take Ryo?" The Earth Lady snorted before she spoke, which Naruto thought was rude. Then again, Naru couldn't remember her name, so she was pretty rude, too. As currency. The Earth Lady looked thoughtful as she continued, "Japan has not taken Ryo in over 100 years. "Well, that sucks," Naruto replied, somewhat grateful not to have to go on a shopping trip, but also worried about her financial situation as she tried to cross her arms. It was weird that she could still feel the absent one. And why the hell did they still think she was from this Japan place? Then shopping's out for me, I guess. She could consider selling her Ryo, Pomona said to Dumbledore before turning to her. "I saw you attempting to count it earlier from your cute little toad purse, child." The professor of herbology saw the girl's pinkening cheeks as she looked away. Pomona smiled at her but wondered why the girl teared up. "I am not making fun of you, my dear, I only saw how difficult it was for you to work through the task with one arm. I am truly sorry for your loss." Naruto didn't know how to deal with how nice and polite everyone here was. It wasn't her luck to land in a favorable situation. As Kakashi-sensei always said, she was a magnet for trouble. Plus, it's not like she wanted anyone's pity or charity. "It's fine. Whatever I have to do," she smiled, hoping to fool them. "But I need to keep some of it for when I go back." Dumbledore hummed, but his chakra was wavering and becoming mournful at what she'd said. "Whatever." She looked away from him uncomfortably and went back to looking around the room, really wanting to play with the shiny scales that were literally on display. What a weird place. Scales were meant to be used. She'd seen them being used in the market and in the hospital. Perhaps they were on display because they were considered a relic? Weird. Not to sound like those Akatsuki guys or anything, but the only thing worth putting on display, as far as she was concerned, was art. Sai had given her a painting of their team, and it was the only thing that she'd displayed on her wall in the new apartment Yamato Taiko built after Nagato flattened Konoha. She tried to put the awful memories of her home being destroyed out of her mind. Kami, her lollipop was delicious. That was a good thing to think about. Who knew that Amwa was onto such an awesome candy? "Shit, I've gotta get back," she said, speaking more to herself than anyone, and thinking about her friends, not noticing the disapproval over her language by the women in the room. She tried to scratch her arm, but it wasn't there, so in embarrassment, she smiled up at the room's bigwig. Everyone's in those damn pods, and I don't really know how long they can survive in there, whether they're having good dreams or not. Yeah, no. Naruto, Dumbledore gently said as he stood up. I think I know of someone who can explain, better than I, why you don't have to worry about money here, and perhaps, more regarding those you care about. Oh, okay, Naruto said, jumping up. She nearly ran into a big saucer of something shiny and liquidy looking. The weird substance had chakra. So did the old hat. Let's go then, old man. Dumbledore's office was starting to creep her out. Minerva scolded her for calling Dumbledore what he really was again as she hooked her good arm around the headmaster/old sensei's arm. Oh. And don't worry about my missing arm. Tabia, the blonde said, grinning back at the others. As soon as my chakra levels are normal, I'll be able to sprout plenty of replacements that'll hopefully take care of normal stuff for me. Please don't do that, Naruto, Albus requested pleadingly. One of the last things anyone needed to see was what he'd observed in the girl's memories. The Death Eaters and Ministry would be too interested in an ability to form magic or chakra into multiple arms that the child had used to defend herself during the horrific war she fought. He could only imagine what they'd do to her. No, he had to protect her. He feared that he had been the one to accidentally bring her here. If what he'd done had literally ended her entire society, he owed the girl more than he'd ever be able to repay. They'd learn more about that soon enough, however. Shall we, my dear? He asked, smiling down at the girl who had attached herself to him. There's someone in a painting I believe you'd like to see. Naruto's brows furrowed as she tried to figure that statement out. Whatever you say, the blonde replied, shrugging her shoulders and wincing because of the pain simply moving caused her bad arm again. She grinned through it, knowing that she really needed to pay a lot more attention to everything around her. She'd been spacing out repeatedly for nearly an hour or more, and who knows what she'd already missed. She fell behind Dumbledore as she followed him down a spiral staircase. I don't remember coming here, Tabia. Oi. Did you take over my body? Shouldn't I remember that? Naruto wasn't sure exactly how the Yamanaka's jutsu or this leglomancy thing worked, just that it did. She then wondered why Ino hadn't taken over Sasuke's or Sai's body to have her way with them. Because unlike you, she's not a complete pervert. Kurama. I'm exhausted, go away. Naruto gaped at being immediately shut out of her mindscape at a time like this. Asshole fox. They needed to figure out what happened. KEH, you'd at least think he'd be interested in what was going on with his siblings. Are you alright, Naruto? You seem preoccupied, Albus remarked lightly when the excitable girl didn't respond to his question. No. I'm fine, Naruto said quickly before gawking at the paintings on the wall. The people pictured were watching her and whispering to each other. Unlike in Dumbledore's office, where the walls were bare, although they were hazy, now that she thought more about it, there were framed pictures everywhere here with real people inside. They were all dressed in ways that proved they weren't fighters. I think I'm losing it, Kai, she yelled, disrupting her chakra and thus the wind and magic around her to ensure she wasn't in a genjutsu. She kept forgetting to do that earlier. Holy shit. Look at those stairs, she laughed, closed her eyes, and shook her head hard enough to whack herself with her long hair. The shampoo she'd used was super smelly, but thankfully, it only left a very subdued, pleasant, flowery smell. Gah. Her attention deficit problems, as Kakashi-sensei called them, were rearing their ugly heads again. Why is there chakra or magic, or whatever it is, in inanimate objects, Tabia? Her question wasn't answered and that only made her more curious. A few people wandering the halls were openly staring at her, which made the blue-eyed teen uncomfortable. A couple even pointed toward and made remarks about the power she'd just displayed, arm, or boobs, which again, was incredibly rude. She couldn't help that she was missing an arm thanks to the bastard, or that Uzumaki women were supposedly gifted when it came to their figures. That was another reason she needed bandages to squish her goods down, rather than this bra thing that all but put them on display. She nodded at the idiots and pervs as politely as she could while glaring, then tried to ignore them completely. More and more were gathering as they walked along, though, and it was hard to listen to whatever the old sensei was talking about. "You're so fancy, Tabia. You'll have to explain things in simpler terms to me, I'm afraid." "Ah, we're here," Dumbledore said, coming to the end of the hall he'd directed her to. Naruto was pretty sure he was ignoring her again, this time, probably not wanting to repeat himself. "If you'll excuse me, my dear, I'll let you two talk. I must attend those students who are so interested in you." The headmaster turned away from her, and Naruto wondered who the heck she was supposed to talk to. It had only been the two of them walking and... "Naruto," a familiar voice breathed. Naruto closed her eyes and turned toward the opposite wall of weird portraits she'd been passing, swallowing hard as she did so. All too familiar blue eyes, not a hint of black in their sclera, no cracks in his skin this time. Getting her wits about her, her eyes burning with the tears she refused to shed, Naruto forced herself to speak. "What are you doing here, Tou-san? And how is this even possible? What are you doing here, Tou-san?" Naruto tried to cross her arms in front of her, in what she realized was a childlike protective stance. Which was ridiculous. What was she going to do? She only had one arm to use hand signs with, she had no wand of all the stupid things, and what? Was she going to attack her father? Her father who was acting like he was real and alive and in a damn picture frame. And that this was all normal. Minato couldn't help but flinch when his daughter repeated her earlier question. The anger in her eyes was so intense, so understandable, it was worse than the memories he somehow received. Of when she punched him in the gut when his chakra imprint found her. As she stepped back so that he could see more of her, he had a fit. "Naruto, what? What happened to your arm?" "Who cares what happened to my stupid arm? What are you doing alive and in a picture? Did you just leave me all this time?" She didn't care that her questions obviously made her father miserable. Hadn't his decisions made her miserable almost the entirety of her life? Yes, she and Kurama had a good relationship now, but he was a grumpy fox who lived solely inside of her, and had only, finally, accepted her offer of friendship in the last weeks or maybe a month at most. Actually, she needed to kick his ass or pull one of his whiskers or something for that. Maybe not. Never mind. Kami. She was being such an emo. Minato closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "No, Naruto. I am not alive. I understand that I was resurrected to aid you in the war, but I, in fact, died shortly after your birth. Now, how did you find yourself at Hogwarts?" Naruto shook her head like a wet dog, unsure of whether or not she was unhappy her father was dead again. No, of course, she was said that he was dead, but, "You don't look dead," she said, shifting awkwardly. It was disgusting of her, she thought, that she would have wanted him dead just to ensure he hadn't left her alone all of this time, but she decided to put that out of her mind for now. The blonde looked back toward the direction she came from and was grateful that Dumbledore did something with his wand that kept all those curious kids and teenagers away from her. "And I have no idea of how I got here. Sasuke wanted to fight. Kill all the cage and he ensnared the Baijuyu." She choked out something between a singular sob and hysterical laugh before getting herself under control. "I just wanted to bring him back and make him see reason, but he really wanted to kill me. And I got this," she spat, holding out her non-arm and gesturing toward it with her hand, "fighting him. But Dumbledore-sama said that I got kicked out of Mer people. A Mer people society or whatever. Are you fucking kidding me?" Nope, Not even supposed mer people wanted me with them, so they threw me on shore here. Or something, she said, trembling with anxiety. Not that I wanted to live with mermaids, yeah no. Language, Naruto, he mumbled when she used the F word. The glare he got in response to that as she continued ranting was right up there with the ones he used to get from Kushina. He waited for her to finish and thought about her current plight more. I was told about Sasuke. How? You weren't there at the end of everything. You'd already gone to the Pure Lands, or so I thought. Why did you go to a picture frame? One question at a time, Naruto, Minato said thoughtfully, holding up one hand to his daughter. Where were you two fighting exactly? Naruto exhaled loudly. She didn't like to think of what happened with her crazy former teammate, and she was pretty frustrated that her father was in a damn picture frame and being so reasonable. Sometimes she wondered why she was so compelled to reach for Sasuke bastard, and then she remembered, of course, Ashura and Indra. Ero Sennin always thought she was secretly in love with the team, but that thought made her want to hurl. Valley of the End, she finally answered. Her father didn't even look surprised. It wasn't the first time. She grit her teeth, almost wishing that she had gone in for the kill when she was 12, the first time Sasuke had tried, and nearly succeeded, in killing her. She'd never killed anyone alive, though, and when she thought about it again, knew good and well that she could never kill Sasuke. Unless she had? Oh, Kami. Naruto, breathe, Minato said calmingly. He wasn't sure what she thought of, but his daughter seemed to be having a panic attack. Breath with me, Naru-chan. Listen, he said carefully. I've experienced this before. In, and out. In, and out. There you go, he finally praised, good girl. He couldn't help but chuckle when she glared at him again. You look even more like your mother when making that expression, he finally said when Naruto was able to fully stand up again. When I do something idiotic, in her words. Naruto drawled out, she around. Minato took a deep breath, feeling terrible for his little girl, who wasn't so little anymore. She is. But she's unable to meet you here. Why? Naruto, he said, waiting to make sure that she was in a good place emotionally again, which? Who was he kidding? Of course, she wasn't. She'd had to fight her best friend to the point that she'd lost an arm and had somehow ended up at Hogwarts of all places. Your mother was from the royal line in Uzushio, she was from the elemental nations. And you weren't. Naruto hissed in an incredulous whisper. Not originally, he sighed. My people were from Europe originally, he said, keeping things vague. That's outside of the elemental nations and where you are now, he added, still giving very little away. We were on an overseas trip when I was very small. I only remember being dragged underwater, which was when, I suppose, my magic activated for the first time. Naruto stared at him in disbelief before feeling even more flustered as she considered what she knew about geography. She'd skipped a lot of classes back at the academy. Was, Anno, that something I missed at the academy? And I thought that I was in England or Kami, they have a bunch of supposed names for this place, she continued pathetically, wondering where the hell they really were, and if someone had been lying to her. Yes. Well, and no, Minato said, frowning as he wondered why she didn't know that. Considering all of the world's known and unknown countries and regions, learning about them would have taken a long time and taken away from her shinobi and kunoichi studies. As Hokage, he knew that he couldn't allow anyone to know about outside countries, although he was sure that Hiruzen knew. He was the professor, after all, and had no problem allowing a young orphan who spoke another language into his hidden village. Naruto, the yondaime spoke in a low tone, making his beautiful daughter come closer to the picture frame he was in. Do not let anyone know about the elemental nations. Naruto nodded her head slowly, with inquisitive eyes and furrowed brows, so he continued. If those within them knew about the outside world, there is no doubt that some would want to escape. Someone who can engage chakra could do a great deal of damage to a weak, civilian society, particularly a rogue. I can see that, Naruto ultimately replied, but shook her head, lightly tossing her hair around the more she considered her horrible situation. The thing is, everyone there, anyone, anywhere, with chakra, I think, is stuck in that infinite illusion. Sasuke and I. Well, the sage said that he and I had to come together to break the genjutsu. I have to get back. Naruto, even I don't know how long you've been away, or if there's a time-space variant between Konoha and Scotland, Minato said, not wanting her to get her hopes up. I won't just abandon them, she exclaimed, incensed at the mere idea. I don't expect you to, Minato said soothingly. And that makes me proud of you. Naruto gave him a very deadpan expression, and wow, wasn't that something? You must use your chakra, and for that, you may have to use a wand. You certainly need to in order to fit in. Minato had more than an overview of what was currently going on in the wizarding world and knew things were bad. The civilian world. Kami-sama, what a mess. Naruto stared at him for several seconds before she spoke. Just wave one around. Naruto asked, once again, incredulous. There's more to it than that. Now, he then asked himself, did her teammate throw her to Hogwarts with his Rinnegan, or did a merperson drag her to what must be Black Lake? What? Naruto asked sharply, pulling her hair on one side now. If you're dead, how did you know that Sasuke has the Rinnegan? Is someone with you? Minato chuckled, glad that his daughter was as sharp as he always knew that she'd be. But he refused to address that at this point, it would be too much of a grievous shock to her. I have to go now, Naruto. What do you mean, go? She asked, her anger rising. Where the hell do you have to go? You're in a picture frame for fuck's sake. Naruto bit her lips before she could curse out her father in the worst way possible. Language, Naru-chan. And I'll see you later, princess. Naruto grabbed the picture that her father just walked out of, absolutely furious with him. Would she ever see him again? She still had so many questions. She began to shake it, hesitating for a moment when everything in the picture frame, an office chair, books behind where he'd just been, etc., all began falling over or out of their shelves. Dumbledore's seemingly ancient hand was then on hers. Let's leave that on the wall, my dear. Damn it. He just left. Are your questions answered? No. Naruto began, then let out a frustrated groan. Some maybe. Care to share? I'm sure that we can work this out. Two heads are better than one, of course. Naruto looked into the headmaster's super wrinkly face and twinkling eyes and breathed out, now on guard. Dumbledore-sama was way too curious. Her father had been serious about keeping the elemental nations a secret, and she could only hope that wherever she had ended up, she was far stronger than the wizards and witches here, but maybe not. Maybe they could do worse things with their wands than she and her comrades could do with jutsus. I'm too tired right now, she said. It was a half-truth. Half-truths were always the best way to go. Kakashi-sensei said using little white lies was the only chance she'd ever have of tricking anyone. Her favorite Jonin said he wasn't the only person who could read her like one of his pervy books. Ah, that's too bad. I was hoping that you could begin training with a wand sooner rather than later. Additionally, from what he'd learned of her past, determination, and pure heart, Dumbledore fully believed that Miss Namikaze would make an exceptional ally to the Order's cause. Namikaze Naruto was already a true warrior, even though she was still a child. Oh, Naruto said, perking up entirely. I can do that. I thought so, Dumbledore said, a wry smile on his way too whiskered face, in Naruto's opinion. He politely gestured for her to follow him back to the infirmary. "I shall speak with our gamekeeper, and return to you shortly," he said once reaching their destination. "Poppy, Miss Namikaze will need warmer clothing." "Yes, Professor. Of course." Naruto let out a sigh, knowing that this meant more scratchy clothes. Once Dumbledore had left again, she asked the question she'd been asking every woman she'd come across here again. "Can we please do something about this bra thing?" Pomfrey-san's scandalized expression gave way to one of kindness, something Naruto appreciated immensely. "You'll get used to them, Miss Namikaze, so no. It's embarrassing, yeah no," she said more quietly. A boy that was sitting in a bed was looking at her like she was an alien, and openly gawking at what she guessed was her former arm. "I can't get it or even bandages on and off by myself right now." "Ah, a sports bra will help with that. Hagrid will take you to purchase your robes, but naturally, he'll be too polite to enter a ladies' boutique." Poppy took a breath, ignoring for now why in the world that made the young witch roll her eyes. "I've already added a few shops I know to be our young witch's favorites to your itinerary. You'll be needing more than the clothing we've given you so far." "Yeah, I really appreciate your generosity, yeah no. My jumpsuit really took a beating when this happened," she added, gesturing again to her blown-off arm. Naruto sat down on her bunk for a few minutes but stood right back up when Dumbledore came in with the largest, hairiest man she'd ever seen. "Wow. You're really big, Tabia." Not meaning to embarrass herself or the big guy, Naruto's mouth opened to speak before her brain further engaged. "Congratulations." Naruto's eyes continued darting to the gigantic man beside her as they walked around a heavily decorated city that was even bigger than the fire capital. Hagrid-san was really nervous around her, but kindly trying to explain even the simplest of things as they walked through this frozen wonderland. Having different, apparently translated words come out of her mouth like it was no biggie was something Naruto was still getting used to. The city of London was really amazing, although the temperature really sucked. It was even colder than in Iron Country. And so did the vehicles, they were even faster than what she'd seen in Spring Country. She figured she could definitely outrun them, but what would be the point? Plus, they were so big, they'd do damage to her if they went out of control and hit her unless she was in Sage mode. She was already missing an arm, so Naruto figured it was about damn time that she tried to avoid getting hurt, if possible. Hagrid pointed to the building that looked like a crazily fancy apartment building. "And here's our first stop, Gringotts. Now Naruto, when ya goes in there, there's gonna be some fellas at look a little different than us. They're not to be trifled with, them goblins." One of the girl's golden eyebrows rose when he mentioned the goblins. "Okay, goblins, why not?" Naruto thought. "Whatever. Okay. Hey, I was wondering," Naruto said brightly before whispering toward the large man, her hand covering her mouth so no one could lip read what she was saying. "You use an umbrella instead of a wand, and I was thinking that's damn useful. I mean, you said it rains a lot around here, and having one would help me conserve my, magic." "Magic, not chakra," Naruto reminded herself for at least the 100th time. She had to be very careful of what she said, something she'd always had a hard time with. "Plus I've only got the one arm, so there's another reason to have one thing like an umbrella that can do two things," she said lamely, rolling her eyes at how goofy she sounded. Hagrid smiled down at the teenager. She was quite the character, and he'd always trust Dumbledore's judgment, great man that he was. Dumbledore said this witch was terrible powerful and would be a wonderful ally, and that she had been a child soldier. Absolutely terrible, that was. But asking such innocent questions while already keeping his umbrella, our little secret, she laughed when he brought her into Diagon Alley after telling her the truth. And the way she'd made a very solemn pinky promise out of the whole thing. He thought he might just like this little one. Don't worry Abu, that, Hagrid said, reaching up and scratching his beard. As I was saying, Gringotts Wizarding Bank's our first stop. Oh? Do ya have to make a deposit or something? Naruto asked innocently. Oh. Can I exchange my Ryo for your... whatever they're called? Banks do that, right? I've never had a bank outside of Gama-chan, but the pervert, I mean, my godfather had one. He was rich as all hell, although it's a wonder, yeah no. Sexual harassment claims end. Naruto stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening at the way Hagrid was looking at her in something akin to horror. Hee. My godfather was a truly great and powerful man, really. I always thought he was the biggest, best person in the world, yeah no. But then I met you. Naruto looked away, blushing furiously, and scolded herself. She'd only meant that Hagrid was even bigger than Jiraiya, but couldn't bring herself to correct her words because of the way Hagrid seemed to grow even taller at the compliment. He patted her head with his huge hand, and Naruto had to swallow down emotion at the way the gesture was similar to something only Ero-Sennin and Kakashi-sensei had done. Iruka-sensei had his own brand of affection. It usually included ramen or waving a finger at her, sometimes with an enlarged head. Bah-chan yelled and threw things, but was almost always on her side. She missed them so much. Silently, she again prayed to Kami that Kakashi-sensei, Sakura-chan, and the bastard were all okay and had freed everyone without her. Not today, Hagrid said, scratching his beard again. We gotta get your gold tape for your supplies. Naruto looked at him as if he was crazy. Remember? Naruto thought they'd discussed like this well enough on the way here. I've never had gold, Hagrid-san. Sorry, she said, wondering why she apologized. She'd always been damn poor outside of some decent mission pay. Hagrid was reminded of when he brought a young Mr. Potter here. Do ya think your family didn't leave ya anything? Oh. Right. Naruto remembered her father saying his family was from Europe in that weird magical picture, so this was where her parents' Ryo was all this time. She'd never received anything of theirs before, and for some reason, Ryo, being the only thing she'd inherit, it was disappointing. Well, she did have a Hiraishin Kunao that was back in her weapons pouch. That one Kunao meant more to her than any amount of Ryo. Although her weapons were locked up now, she'd get them back soon enough. One way or another. She soon met a goblin, which was weird. She assumed he'd have a bad attitude and he did, but she also thought he'd be bigger and have wings or something, which he didn't. Maybe she was thinking of a gargoyle? Oh well. He took her on a long roller coaster ride like the short one they had in AIM, so he was alright in her books at first. Until she felt the chakra of what was being imprisoned there. Who the fuck thought they could chain up something like that? She screamed when she noticed the animal's feet. She was nearly big as half of Kurama. It's a dragon. For fuck's sake, Kurama said in her mindscape, echoing his host's thoughts. Naruto, watch your language, young lady, Hagrid hissed, absolutely appalled that anyone would say something like that in front of a tricky goblin. We'll be speaking o' this later. I'll get you out of here, girl. Just hang on, okay, she screamed up at the dragon. The gargoyle. Goblin, turned back toward her, glared, then looked at Hagrid and rolled his eyes. Fucker, she mumbled to herself about him. She'd give just about anyone a chance, but this guy? He didn't even care about that poor dragon. He was a criminal in her eyes for what he'd done. Just like your father who caged me, Naruto. Naruto sighed out loud as the roller coaster ride came to an end. I thought you got over your hatred of him. He gave me you, so I suppose I did. One of Kurama's chops flinched back in annoyance at the way the girl's eyes welled up with tears shortly after his horrible admission. I love you, Kurama. Go away. Idiot, he replied without heat as he looked away in embarrassment. He tried to communicate with the dragon telepathically as he could with his siblings, but couldn't get through to her, naturally. Around the magical people in this place, he would refrain from using Naruto's big mouth to voice his support for the creature for now. He agreed with Naruto, there were many unknowns here, even to him. Kurama knew of dragons, however, from what he thought was a bygone era. Great creations such as those should never be caged, he thought. Much like him and his siblings, only the Byakuya were far more impressive, of course. Except for maybe Shukaku. Naruto was careful to keep her senses sharp as they exited the little cart they were in. The goblin was super negative and she didn't like his chakra very much. She didn't know why he still had a problem with her. She'd had to provide blood and magic to prove that she was a namikaze, although he called her a Monty Mole or something like that. He opened a cell door and Naruto would only glance inside, suspicion clouding her mind. There was a whole bunch of shiny gold coin things, some scrolls, and books, and... "Let's get what ya need then," Hagrid said easily. "You want me to go in there?" Naruto asked hesitantly. She figured if they pushed her in and locked her up with all this stuff that she could get out easily enough. She was a ninja, but could she really? There was all kinds of chakra all over this bank and giant basement, and these goblins had managed to lock down that poor dragon. There had even been wind chakra pushing the roller coaster. She should have asked Ero Sennin if the roller coaster he told her about in AIM used the same technique. How many of those gold thingies do I need? Considerin' the extra stops we gotta make. Plenty, Hagrid said, withholding a groan. Considering the hours the shops were open, this would be a 2-day shopping trip. Naruto still wasn't moving, so he pushed her into the vault, making the witch panic. "S okay, Naruto, S alright. Forgive me for..." Hagrid was without words. He felt so bad and quickly pulled back from the girl's shoulders he gently grabbed in order to calm her down. She had winced with obvious pain from her missing arm on one side and that made him feel terrible. When he pushed her in, he didn't mean to make her think they'd be imprisoning her. "Merlin, Naruto. We'd never leave ya in a place like this." Dumbledore's words came back to Hagrid, and he felt like he'd already failed him. And Naruto. She's a child soldier, trained since the age of 5 and truly alone and on her own since even before that, Hagrid. Please be more careful with Miss Namikaze than you've perhaps been with any child. "It's okay, Hagrid-san," Naruto said with a shaky breath, looking at her warm boots and counting her breaths. "And sorry I made you uncomfortable with my arm. Or lack of an arm." She had been trying to get used to the way people here stared at her covered stump with pity or aversion to it. It had been a long time since she'd gotten looks like that. Not long enough, though, she thought, remembering how the villagers used to treat her before radically changing their tune once she saved them. "Don't be silly. I'm the one tha should be apologizing," Hagrid said sincerely. He received a watery smile in return before Naruto began looking around the vault, a bit of bounce increasing in her steps the more she studied things. She scratched her head and Hagrid was immensely relieved that her mind was now on something else. The poor thing surely had what people were now calling PTSD. He'd have to speak to Dumbledore about it. "I don't have a storage scroll," Naruto muttered with a pout, putting her hand on her hips, or trying to. She wondered how long she'd be waving her non-arm around as if it was still there. It was a little painful if she was being truthful. "I don't think my pockets are big enough, no. I wish I had some cargo pants or my old jacket. It had lots of inner pockets and traps." "Use their purse," Hagrid said, pointing to a shiny bag that was sitting in the corner of the vault on a shelf. Naruto approached it, clearly horrified. In front of her was a purse that was so sparkly and bejeweled, it was absolutely ridiculous. "Seriously? Well, it's not like there's anything else I can put gold in." She looked around, wondering if she was in that genjutsu again, having some kind of far-out, freaky dream. Kai, she yelled, forcing a bunch of her chakra out. Nothing changed, although Hagrid and the goblin who'd never given his name had grabbed onto things so they didn't get blown away. Hee hee. Sorry about. The dragon outside screamed, making all three recoil. Naruto looked to Hagrid, wanting to rescue it right now, but the way the goblin was looking at her with such interest made her think twice. I will get her out of here. You will do no such thing, Miss Montmorency, the goblin sneered. Or should I say, Miss Namikaze. Hagrid's hand came down on Naruto's head, and he shook his own unhappily. Naruto took a deep breath, reminding herself not to lash out. Hagrid, at least, seemed to feel for the animal, and it might be stupid, but she bet he could be an ally in soon getting the old girl out of here. She nodded her head, comforted by the way Hagrid ruffled her hair, looking so concerned. She raised her shoulders in disbelief as she went ahead and scooped up some gold and tossed it into the hideous purse. Hagrid encouraged her to take even more of it, although it made her incredibly uncomfortable. This wasn't money she had earned. 2 for Kami's sake. How was she supposed to defend herself or anyone else, carrying a purse with only one arm? She'd never had a purse before. Sakura-chan and Ino-chan had carried pretty bags in addition to their backpacks in their first year or so at the academy, as had most of the other girls in her class. Naruto wasn't sure why they stopped. She guessed they'd eventually been warned against carrying the stupid things around in Kunoichi classes. She hadn't been allowed in Kunoichi classes. The instructor there, at least, was openly hostile and full of obvious hatred for her, unlike Mizuki team. I don't think I can carry this and the books and stuff, she began before snorting. Kami. I can't believe that I, Uzumaki Naruto, actually want to open a book, she laughed at herself. Namikaze, I mean, she said, correcting herself. Fortunately, Hagrid didn't react to her mistake, although Goblin Jerk's giant eyebrows narrowed. Just drop books in your purse, Hagrid said. Naruto noticed that he clearly wanted to get moving. Warily, she tried to put the book inside the purse and was shocked to find that it went right in. She picked the bag up and shook it, delighted to find that it was still nice and light. Shugoi. It was like a storage scroll. A super ugly storage scroll. She piled more books and scrolls into it eagerly, wondering if this is how Sakura-chan felt whenever she saw something to read. Even a sign or banner. Her teammate was weird, the blonde remembered fondly. She had to get back to her. Thinking more about her current predicament, she pulled out Gama-chan and emptied her Ryo into the storage scroll/hideous bag, then filled the toad wallet with gold instead. She was learning that everything was a pain when one was missing an arm. It's not like you're the first person this has happened to, Naruto, she reminded herself, scolding herself for being self-centered and ignorant about such things. Is this much gold okay? Naruto finally asked Hagrid. She had no idea of how much gold was worth in comparison to Ryo, or how much supplies here cost. Tha should do. Smart thinkin' on your little toad, he said, figuring she now had more than enough gold on her to take care of her needs plus treats and such. Nodding her head, Naruto preened at the praise, putting Gama-chan back in her deep coat pocket. It's not like she wanted to stay here, at all, but she had to remember her father's words, you must use your chakra, and for that, you may have to use a wand. You certainly need to in order to fit in. In order to fit in, she repeated in her mind. For now, fitting in was key. Just think of it as an infiltration mission, Naruto. Only until you can find a way out of here. Who knows? If she pulled this off, maybe she could do more of those missions and eventually prove that she could be an effective diplomat. Surely Kakashi-sensei and Baa-chan would recognize that she had those skills if she managed this like a mission effectively. Maybe she could even get promoted. Riding the roller coaster back up wasn't nearly as much fun, but at least it gave her a chance to reassure the dragon that she'd be back for her. Poor thing. Once they were back outside in the biting cold, Hagrid pulled her into an alley. Naruto reached out her senses, but it seemed that Hagrid felt secure enough to use his chakra through his umbrella again. He tapped Naruto's hideous purse and it shrunk down to less than the size of her Gama-chan. Shugoi. Thank you so much, Hagrid-san. Now I can hide that ugly thing. She put it into the same pocket she could easily reach. Hagrid might not quite understand the foreign teenager, but he did like her. Money obviously meant little to her, status-wise, from what she'd both told him earlier and what he'd just seen. The discomfort or disgust that had been clear in her face as she slowly put coins in her bag was proof enough for him. Now, Naruto, he said in a subdued scolding tone, there will be no more. Yat in the bank WIDHA hidden dragon. Dumbledore wants Yate fit in, says it's important. Get in, your things from Gringotts and the shops, talkin', ya round. He knows he can trust me to see to it. Yes sir, I understand, Naruto said, feeling ambivalent. She liked Dumbledore and really liked Hagrid so far, and it was plain as day to her that Hogwarts headmaster meant the world to Hagrid. Just like me with Ero Sennin, Sensei, and Sensei. She'd do just about anything to please them. Thinking of how pathetic that was, she shook off that little bit of her that must still be resentful of the way some of her favorite people had abandoned her for years. About them never telling her about her parents. The way it didn't even seem to faze Kakashi-sensei when she told him she'd met her father in her seal, and discovered who he even was then. Get hold of your magic, if ya will, Hagrid said quietly, feeling it crackle in the air enough to split and raise the girl's hair up in all directions. Right. Sorry about that, Naruto replied, realizing that she'd been apologizing a lot lately. She also felt guilty for what she'd just been thinking about her poor dead mentor/godfather, and the people she'd left behind. Man, where's the waterfall of truth when I need it? Now she was depressed again. She followed Hagrid around quietly, completely unaware of where she was being taken. Where are we shopping anyway? Naruto asked glumly. She hated shopping. Here in Hogsmeade. Hagrid knew that this young witch was alright. And now he had proof. He did begin to worry a little about her mental state, as the witch came up with more and more outlandish plans to rescue that poor dragon that was being held prisoner in the bowels of Gringotts, something he'd been horrified to realize even existed there. As she began spinning her third idea, a quite imaginative one of how she could have a toad of all the silly things, bring the dragon to their magical realm, then the dragon could do whatever the hell it wants to, Hagrid laughed heartily. He covered his mouth when he saw how serious the witch was as she glared at him. He couldn't contain his mirth, though. You've got no faith in me, Tabia, the one-armed witch pouted before standing up straight and even bouncing once on her toes. That's alright. I'll just have to prove to you that I can do it. Now, what's the deal with all these books? I've already got enough to read from the vault to last a lifetime, Naruto said seriously before snarking, someone else's lifetime. Hagrid kindly bent down to speak to the little blonde in a lower voice. Dumbledore says you're behind, Naruto. You'll have to have extra lessons and such to catch up. Well, that sucks and so do these, Naruto said, not minding the way the other customers and especially the owners of Flourish and Blots scowled at her for saying so. None of the attention was malicious, and people got really weird over their books, just look at Kakashi-sensei. Considering it more, she looked around the bookstore, searching for the bright covers of Ika Ika. Even the most upstanding of normal bookstores always carried it on the back shelves for their perverts. Sadly, there was no Ika Ika smut to be found. She did find what she guessed was a cookbook, but like everything else, couldn't read a word of it. The food in it looked kinda gross, so it was no big loss. After buying, as in, actually paying for, books of all the crappy things, Naruto and Hagrid continued their shopping trip. I wonder if the dragon will want to be friends once we get her out of there. Dragons and people are magicians, can be friends, right? Witches and wizards, Naruto, Hagrid corrected, grimacing and offering apologetic looks to everyone within hearing distance. Calling their kind magicians was quite insulting. Magicians were simply muggles who played various tricks on their own for entertainment value. Hagrid let out an enormous snotty sniff a minute later, thinking of poor little Norbert, and apologized. Indeed we can be friends dragons. Yada. Naruto cheered. The dynamic duo's next stop was to buy a cauldron, which Naruto thought was hilarious before getting impossibly excited about chemistry, something she said she'd always been good at. Hearing her ideas of what she could cook up in her new cauldron made him, for the first time, feel sorry for old Snape. As the afternoon continued, Naruto complained between every shop they went into but was impossibly excited once inside the next stop as their journey moved forward. Looking through the pretty telescope, Naruto adjusted it enough to check out the other wizard people down the way, not magicians, she reminded herself. This is like a pervert's wet dream. Tabia, she remarked to herself. Hagrid turned around so fast he knocked half of the store's displayed inventory over. They were chased out while Naruto laughed and pulled her much larger companion along with her. How about a magic ball? Can I get a magic ball? Gigi probably did good stuff with his, along with all the perving, of course. I don't want to know what you're wantin' THA for. And please, no more odd comments Abu. That stuff, he hissed the last two words. You mean sex? Naruto didn't allow herself to laugh at the big old hairy man who turned so red that steam literally came out of his ears. No worries, Hagrid-san, she said as she patted his arm. I'm a frontline Kuno witch, not a seduction witch, for your information. I need a drink, Hagrid sighed unhappily minutes later. Merlin's beard. What in the world is a seduction witch? Naruto was thirsty, too, so the shoppers made their way to the leaky cauldron. Hagrid ordered a large whiskey but scolded Naruto, who requested the same thing. How in the world the girl's breath ended up smelling like whiskey despite his intervention, he would never know. Hagrid could only be grateful that Naruto must have only had a sip because she didn't act inebriated in the slightest, although her whiskered cheeks were quite pink. In a magnificent office, Dumbledore chuckled to himself as he watched his gamekeeper and the blue-eyed witch through a one-of-a-kind relic. Although a child of her age certainly shouldn't be drinking, Miss Namikaze's sleight of hand was extraordinary. Albus could only imagine the havoc she could wreak if she had two hands. He wondered if he should allow her to teach a class on it, but that would be a class for members of the order. He did not want his students to be taken advantage of. He'd have to speak with Miss Namikaze to ensure that she kept her hand to herself, and would respect her fellows. And perhaps it is time to visit a certain portrait of a blonde-haired wizarding shinobi close to the Ravenclaw common room, Dumbledore thought. After all, Minato had always been cordial in the past. The next morning, Naruto was seriously unimpressed with the animals that were available to buy. The shop was almost as bad and even stinkier than the shop where they bought her robes, big flowy things that would only get in her way that she was still required to pay for. And get measured for. Why? The damn things were so big, Naruto knew she'd have to tape them to her body every day if required to wear them. If I'm going to partner with an animal, it'll be a toad, she sniffed. Nothing else will do. Hagrid, a jolly man, exclaimed, greeting her big friend with a shake of hands instead of a bow. Good to see you. I couldn't help but hear the young lady's request. Hagrid nodded. Good to see ya, Dave. Miss Namikaze, as a certain affinity, I suppose ya could say, for toads. Toads, Riso Auto, style. Hagrid thought to himself. Between the Toad and Naruto's missing arm, the gamekeeper hoped that she wouldn't be ostracized from her peers. I'm afraid our selection of Toads is sheltering in Hogsmeade. Naruto didn't like the way the man said, selection of Toads, as if they were some kind of pet, which is what Hagrid basically described them as. Oh well. If this Dave-san was enslaving Toads, she'd free them then pound his ass. Good news that is, Naruto, Hagrid asserted before turning to Dave. We're headin' to Hogsmeade as soon as we get Miss Namikaze, ER wand. As he later trudged through the snow, Hagrid realized that Naruto was barely leaving footprints behind her. Spooky. Naruto, we don't want undue attention, so ya need to walk more. Heavily. Naruto snorted at that and didn't do as he said. Hagrid wasn't sure if she was simply too light, was levitating somehow, or if the witch was ignoring him. Ah, here we are. This is Ollivanders, Naruto, Hagrid explained as Naruto looked over the shabby-looking place. No finer maker and collector o' wands than ol' Ollivander. A little bell tinkled as they entered the dusty shop. Is that right? Naruto asked in a deadpan voice. Why is this old dude trying to sneak up on us? Hagrid sat down on a chair. He looked kinda silly in but jumped when the old guy finally revealed himself. Good afternoon, the old dude said in a soft voice. He pouted like a naughty child when Naruto didn't look surprised to see him. Naruto once again snorted. Crap. The old dude looked way too interested in her. How's it going, clerk-san? It is going terribly well, the old dude said a little creepily. The shopkeeper's eyes reminded Naruto of the Hyugas, and she felt incredibly pained by Niji's loss once again. When she was a little girl, she'd harbored a crush on the older boy, but then she found out he was being a bastard to Hinata-chan. Thank goodness he cut that shit out years before he died. No. He was killed protecting me, she reminded herself almost as if to torture herself. The old guy smirked at her. And I thought the Montmorency line had died out. No idea what you're talking about there, dude, Naruto said unhelpfully. This is Miss Namikaze, Hagrid said genially, stepping up next to her. Ah, the old man drawled. Namikaze. I see. He turned away from them and seemed to get lost as he looked through his shelves. He gave Naruto the serious creeps, even though he didn't seem bad, per se, he has a keen interest in preserving himself. Naruto snapped her fingers. Exactly. You're so smart, Kurama. TCH. Naruto came out of her mindscape to hear Ollivander talking to himself, or maybe to Hagrid or her, she wasn't sure. He was definitely rambling, though, something about potions and wood. Well, now. Let's see, Miss Namikaze. He pulled a tape measure with silver markings out of his pocket. Which is your wand arm? I'm right-handed, but that arm got blown off, Naruto said, wiggling her stump around then feeling like an idiot, especially when the wand guy looked like he would pass out. It's fine. The wand guy, Ollivander-san, shook his head as if to shake off his displeasure with what she'd said. Nothing to be done about that, I suppose. Take off your coat and let's see the left. Tut-tut, he said as if to rush the witch. Once the pretty blonde was out of her coat, it was all too obvious that she was missing an arm. Hold out your arm, that's it. He measured various parts of Naruto's arm before frowning and decided to measure her stump, something Naruto didn't appreciate at all. Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance, Miss Namikaze, he said as if stating something he'd said a few hundred times. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. And of course, you will never get such good results with another wizard or witch's wand. Naruto glared at the tape measure and was measuring different parts of her on its own. She swatted it away when it tried to measure her chest. Pervert. She watched Ollivander-san go back to flitting about in his shelves, taking down boxes as he did so. He spoke to the tape measure, which was just weird, before directing his silvery eyes at her again. Right, Miss Namikaze. Try this one. Ebony and dragon heart string. 10 inches. Oddly flexible, just take it and give it a wave. Naruto took it, channeled her chakra into her arm, and blew the wand into pieces. Oh. Sorry. I can pay for it. I think. Oliver looked a little horrified but waved off her apology and offer before finding another wand. Alder and Phoenix Feather. 9 inches. Rather whippy. Try dash. Naruto gave it a wave, her eyes going large as wind chakra shot out the end of it so hard that part of the shop's roof blew off. I'm so sorry. But thanks for the wand. Absolutely not. Oh, come on. That was awesome. That was not awesome, Naruto, Hagrid agreed with the shopkeep. What a drag, Naruto whined, channeling her inner Nara as she made a mental note of exactly where Ollivander put that wand, in case she needed to lift it later. She'd leave payment for it afterward somewhere, of course. She was a good person. The blonde continued to sample a shitload of other wands, but none of them matched the power or ability to withstand her magic. Suddenly an idea occurred to her. Say Ollivander-san. You don't happen to have a wand with fox hair, do ya? The look Ollivander gave her would have made anyone else shrink away in embarrassment for asking such a thing. Naruto just stared at him blankly, waiting for an answer. The man exclaimed, heading for the far back of the shop. He came back with another wand, a big one. Maple. Foxtail. A 16-inch relic of a different time. Just like me, Naruto breathed, hoping that wasn't actually true. She waved the wand around and although it didn't necessarily feel comfortable, it did channel her chakra more. Evenly? Gently? No, it was just better. How's that? I want this one. How much? It's not for sale. Look man, let's be real here, Naruto said, remembering how she always dealt with Tsunade Baa-chan's gambling debts and the goons that were after her. If you don't let me buy this thing, I'm just going to steal it. Naruto. Hagrid yelled, scolding her. The blonde shrugged her shoulders and gave the man a look that, to Ollivander, somehow seemed feral. He shivered despite her broad smile as he agreed. Fine. Yes. Naruto shouted, sounding to Hagrid as if she were a megalomaniac who had lost her mind. Her arm and her additional upper arm were raised high in triumph as they entered the pet store in Hogsmeade. I will free you, my brethren. Oh no, Hagrid thought as his shoulders tensed. Not that again. And what or whom was the witch pledging to free now? Let's make a bit less, F a spectacle, F ourselves, a right. That didn't happen. He noticed Neville Longbottom struggling to hold onto his toad and gave him a little nod. Hagrid would have spoken to the young wizard, but he had his hands full with Naruto at the moment. Neville's eyes widened at the really bright, beautiful woman, who seemed completely insane as his toad tried to jump away again. She was in the most neon orange long cloak he'd ever seen, and staring at the various toads on display as a look of appreciation crossed her pretty face, but it turned to something akin to disgust. He sighed heavily and slumped against the back wall. He'd only come in to get treats for Trevor, and now he'd have to deal with another person who didn't appreciate toads. Naruto gazed upon the imprisoned toads and put her fist on her hips. All of the toads had chakra, but the amount was minuscule. She'd bet the tadpoles she first summoned had more chakra than these lazy bones. Brothers and sisters. Oh, how low you have allowed yourself to get to. Descend, you know what I mean. Naruto winced, she'd kinda lost her steam there. No matter. You're all fat and out of shape, your cha magic is almost completely insignificant. For shame. But fear not. I will see to it that you are freed to join me on the mountain. The toad's excitement and loud croaking encouraged her to unleash her inner maniac. I will see that you reach the pinnacle of youth. Naruto paused and slumped, her upper half almost boneless. Now look what you made me do, she continued as she sulked, glancing around for that horrible sunset genjutsu. Thankfully, it was nowhere to be seen. I'll take them all. Oh, hello there. A fitter toad had jumped onto her shoulder. Neville panicked. Trevor had gotten away, and jumped on a lady. He had never seen him jump so high before. Naruto picked the toad off her shoulder, apologizing to him for handling him so indelicately. I've only got one arm, so please forgive me. The toad croaked and made other noises as the blonde nodded her head. It's nice to meet you, too, Trevor-san. You understand him? Neville asked incredulously as he took his toad back. How's that possible? What do you mean? Hagrid interrupted the two before Naruto could reveal anything that might be overheard by those less trustworthy, although he was extremely curious about how in the world the witch could understand such a simple creature. He hoped that he could convince the blonde teen to teach him their language, simple or not. Neville Longbottom, meet Naruto Namikaze. How's it going, man? Naruto held out her fist. Fist bump me, yo. Oh. Yes, ma'am. Neville agreed, awkwardly bumping his fist with the beautiful lady. Naruto snorted. Calling me that makes me feel old. Just call me Naruto, or Naru if you'd like. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry, Neville said awkwardly. Fortunately, he received an almost impossibly bright, beautiful smile in return. That's okay. Do you partner with Trevor-san? He likes you very much, Naruto said before directing her eyes at the toad in Neville's shaky hands. Neville seemed nervous, and she always liked to put people at ease, but first, she needed to clarify something with Trevor. Toads were her most trusted allies, after all. Forgive me for not calling you Trevor-sama, I'm unaware of the hierarchy here. The toad croaked at her and sounded like it was grumbling. Naruto chuckled and rubbed its little head. Trevor it is, then, she said, continuing her little prank. She had heard the boy trying to deal with Trevor shortly after they came in. And nice to meet you, Neville-san. Yeah, Nice to meet you, too, Neville said, almost squeaking as he turned pink. Naruto never understood why people outside of the village, especially young men, tended to react to her that way but was fairly used to it. For all his lazy-ass smartness, Shikamaru was like that, too. Thankfully, he was the only one to do that in Konoha. Ero Sennin used to call her an idiot every time it happened, rolling his eyes and shaking his head as he did so, but was completely unhelpful in explaining what that reaction meant. Gosh, she missed him so much. She turned from Neville to the toads on display and let out a sad sigh. How are we going to train all these out-of-shape guys, and will my room be big enough for now? Neville didn't understand what she meant, but Hagrid did. Naruto, you're only allowed one pet. They're not pets. They're toads. Yeah, Hagrid agreed as more and more people, many of them were Hogwarts students, came to watch the Loud Witch. Neville looked like he wanted to become one with the ground as he realized all of the attention they were getting. Hagrid knew he should have never allowed her to buy that orange cloak, but it had been on clearance, and Naruto had convinced him that she could work her magic from behind it. It'll give me an edge. Plus she said that he couldn't stop her from buying or stealing it and dared him to try. For some reason, he hadn't liked his odds. You can only buy one toad, that's final, he said, standing firm. Why you're a student? Neville asked, pinkening even more. I don't think I've ever seen you before. All that stuttering reminded Naruto of Hinata-chan. I'm new, she answered with a sad smile. Kurama chose that moment to voice his opinion. The flesh bag has more power than he realizes. I know. He's just shy. He's still an insect. And shyness is a useless or detrimental trait. Don't be so mean, Kurama. Kakashi-sensei was shy and he was super powerful. He was a pervert. So are you. And don't say was. We'll get back there and make sure he's okay. And we'll check on your siblings, too. You're the pervert here, and stop being an idiot, go back to those imbeciles. Naruto pouted, confusing Hagrid and Neville before she brightened back up. Then she pouted again, her bottom lip sticking out even more. Neville thought it was adorable, but Hagrid found her mood changes a little concerning. He feared the girl might be manipulative. Or have what people in those novels called a second personality. Or maybe she was possessed. But I want them all, and I don't want to hurt any of their feelings, Naruto said, then heard snickering behind her. She turned toward the others who were being such busybodies in the shop and glared at them. Do you want me to kick your asses? 'Cause I can do it. Hagrid moved between Naruto and the crowd, glad that most of those who were watching wisely chose to go back to their business or even leave the store. A few first years were poorly hiding but still watching. He was relieved when Naruto only winked at them when she looked around him. Crisis averted, he breathed. Behave yourself, Miss Namikaze. Gomen, she said, ignoring how the words came out of her mouth differently. That weird jutsu/trick/wand wave result was getting a little easier to ignore. She could even appreciate it now, the more she dealt with others. Cursing was especially expressive and beautiful here, she thought. So many new words. Well, there's nothing to be done about it, I suppose, she said defeatedly, stepping closer to the display of toads. Alright guys, you heard him. I can only take one of you, Naruto said, bending over to whisper. For now, she added secretively with a wiggle of her eyebrows. All of the other toads croaked more in return. Naruto listened attentively, trying to feel out what they were saying or feeling. They were a noisy bunch. She stepped closer to the largest, fattest toad who had a resigned look on his face. This one. I couldn't help but overhear, the shopkeeper asked more than said. Miss Namikaze, is it? Yes, Naruto said, glaring at the toad's captor. She just needed an excuse to raise on his. This, particular toad is almost 10 years old. I would suggest a younger. No, she said firmly. He's been held in captivity far too long already. You're with me, she nodded at the fat toad, who immediately jumped on her head. Whoa. You weigh a lot, yeah no. She laughed at the silly toad, reminded of how Kiba used to keep Akamaru on his head when he was a puppy. Hopefully, she'd soon be able to drive her slow-growing head-riding toad, too, just like how Kiba was able to do so with the big Akamaru. She and this toad had a ways to go, though. He most likely had a lot to learn, not to mention getting into better physical shape. After all, for a moment, she thought he'd shattered the vertebrae in her neck when he hopped on board her head. What a fat fuck. Oh, how the great Kyuubi no Kitsune hated amphibians. Shut up, Kurama. We've just gotta get him in shape. The shopkeeper panicked in embarrassment at seeing the toad on the witch's head and reached up to get him off, but the witch moved a few meters back somehow. He didn't even see how she got so far away. Before he even blinked his eyes. Naruto, Hagrid said in a warning voice. He didn't like the way the witch was making him feel so shaky. The unnatural way her hair floated around was a little creepy, too. Sorry, Naruto said, fully reining in the bare trickle of killing intent that escaped her. She gave a tight smile to the poor, innocent toad's warden. He's just fine up there, Clerk-san. I'll be back for the others in time. Gosh darn Naruto. Hagrid scolded. Unfortunately, he knew the witch was totally serious. Naruto exploded at the next store she was taken to. What the hell do you mean? I've gotta have a ball gown. What kind of nonsense is that? I thought this was a school. Hagrid didn't know whether or not to leave Naruto and her great hatred of shopping to the owner of the boutique, Linda, or not. He had to, at least, warn her of the young witch's eccentricities. Linda, however, seemed unfazed. "Tomboy," she said in a deep, unimpressed voice. Linda looked the pretty blonde up and down, trying desperately to ignore the toad on the witch's head. Miss Namikaze had bristled at the name she'd called her, which told her much of what she needed to know. "We can make allowances for that, Miss Namikaze, but know this, the Yule Ball is mandatory for both staff and students." "Well, that sucks," Naruto said, pouting as she tried to cross her arms. "Can I wear a what's it called? A hakama, a suit? I always thought a girl would look super cool in that." "Absolutely not." Naruto glared at the woman, her worst, most terrifying glare without channeling Kurama's chakra into her eyes, but it did nothing. She deflated and blew out an accidental raspberry. "I'll wear a kimono if it's orange," she said as she gave in a bit, deeply fearing that she'd instead be forced to wear the bulbous pieces of heavy fabric she saw being stored en masse in the back of the store in bags. She shivered just thinking about them. Linda's face expressed something very scary to Naruto. She looked intrigued, more and more so from the moment she'd mentioned a hakama. Artsy people were to be feared. And a shopkeeper on top of it. Very scary indeed. "Leave this to me, Hagrid. I'll return Miss Namikaze to you after her fitting." "I'm getting a drink," Hagrid announced, throwing a wave over his shoulder as he ran out of the store. Naruto was incredibly impressed that such a big man could move that fast. "Orange, you say?" Linda asked, a gleam in her eye. Naruto swallowed down the large lump in her throat and nodded her head. She skipped through the snowy landscape, focused on Hagrid's warm chakra. Naruto had escaped Linda-san after being measured every which way and coming to an agreement on a dress thing. It was actually kinda exciting to have something made especially for you. She didn't need to see today's end result, she was sure that it would turn out fine. Linda mentioned that she had grown very tired of fitting girls for mostly the same silhouette over and over, and went on at length about how she had wanted to be challenged. Naruto, it ended up, had proved challenging, she'd said. Entering the homey establishment where Hagrid was hiding out, Naruto realized it was a bar. She whispered a few orders to her companion as she half hid herself. Before Hagrid could see her, she hid the majority of her hair in her cloak, stuck her partner in a large pocket, and asked him to be quiet for her. She wished she had a hat, as once again, no one here seemed to have her brightly colored hair. Until Raya could henge as a hat, she was screwed for head dressings. "What can I get for you?" the bartender asked absently. She didn't even look up at Naruto. "Whiskey. Make it a double, I've had a weird few days," Naruto said with a sigh. She'd only had sake before yesterday, but the whiskey was even better for warming her up. And this place was ridiculously damn cold. She began drinking, enjoying the way it burned on the way down when she heard coughing close to her. Turning, she smiled at the first person around her age she'd met. "Neville-san. Can I buy you a drink?" What? And no. You're supposed to be. He was interrupted when Naruto's large toad flew into his face. Naruto laughed and pulled Raya away. "Nice one, Raya," she said before beginning to put the toad back into her pocket. "Neville, this is Raya." Raya didn't have a name before, which is just terrible, but he agreed to that one. "I wanted to call him something else, but... Never mind that," she stopped herself, not allowing her eyes to tear up. She had wanted to call the toad Jiraiya, but just couldn't get Ero Senin's name out of her mouth. Raya was close enough, and it was cute. So how'd you meet Trevor? Trevor, it turned out, came from his grandmother, and Naruto listened as the shy boy became more confident the more they talked. Neville was an alright guy, agreeing that toads were much more than mere pets. He also didn't mind that she'd pranked him by making him think that she understood what these toads were saying. He even thought it was funny and smart. The only time he weirded out was when she needed to check him for fever by putting her forehead against his. He was still nice, but Naruto wasn't sure what she'd done to change things. Now he was all shy and awkward again. She didn't have long to think about it, though, because a door opened, and she was hit with something that felt malicious. She had Neville behind a nearby screen, hidden, within a half second. Her stomach turned at what she saw. Jinhuriki. How the hell was there another Jinhuriki here? That concludes PT1. Like and subscribe for part 2.